Hey guys, and welcome to another Hobby Tips. So this week we're going to be looking at how to paint black, specifically black cloth or cloaks or robes, anything like that. And there's a few, obviously, theories and ways that you can go about painting black, especially on cloth, and most of them involve using sort of other colors other than, let's say, gray. You're gonna see a lot of tutorials on how to do it with like blue and all that kind of stuff. And generally speaking, most of those kind of approaches are correct. You know, you get a bit more interest and a bit more life out of the black. But there is an argument to be made to using neutral grays, which is what we're going to be doing today. And neutral grays are an interesting one. You know, often, yeah, they can, the argument is they can look a little bit dull or not as good, but there is a case for it. And the way I see it is that, you know, when you have an area of a model that's, you know, like framing a lot of the focal point, like we're going to see in a minute on the Stormcast, you know, you don't necessarily want to draw your eye away from what the focus is and that where all the color is. So having neutral grays, like on a black, almost like a black background, you're then drawing your eye to the center and creating more interest in the area you want people to look at. So sometimes a neutral black is actually what you want. Now the trick with it is that you know, often it's the type of black you use. So what we really want here for the neutral to shine a bit and you know, give it a bit more vibrancy, you actually want something that has a little tiny bit of low sheen or shine in the actual black. So having an ultra matte black with the neutral grays as the highlight doesn't work very well. But what you want is something that has a little bit of life to it, and that adds a lot more depth to the overall color and just gives a bit more interest that way rather than having to add other colors to the black. So let's take a look. So we've got my Stormcast here, and as you can see, the cape just sort of, when you're looking at this model, your eye is drawn to this sort of area, and the colors are more vibrant because this background that's framing, which is all these blacks here, is neutral and moving back into the background so that these colors pop forward. And the other thing that's helping this black out is that it has that low sheen, as you can see off the light there, it's glinting, and that just helps give this a lot of depth, you know, and so in the end it's quite satisfying to look at, but it's not grabbing your attention. It's sitting there in the background and allowing all the other colors to come forward, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So in order to do that, we've got one of the colors that Citadel makes, which actually really works for this, is their Abaddon Black actually is quite satin. So, you know, I would probably suggest Citadel's black for this one, because that's actually going to give you the best results. Other brands do, but most brands will do a very matte black, and I find that doesn't really work for this type of thing. So you want something that just has a little bit of shine to it. And then for the grays, you can use any grays you like. You can mix them with black to blend up, but we're going to be using Army Painter's paints here. So we've got the Necromancer Cloak, just because they have an actual nice convenient sequence of gray going up in lightness. So we've got the dark to the mid, the dungeon gray here, and then we've got the light, which is the uniform gray. And then I've just added a bit of white in there just in case we want to use it. But that's all you need. It's very, very simple. We're doing simple layering and highlighting here, and just practicing our blending and watering down the paints and getting nice, thin, smooth coats to build up that black. And it's a very, very relaxing and enjoyable process. And it's going to teach you about layering and highlighting in a very, very easy to achieve way, and you'll end up with something really cool. So if you're doing a metallic color scheme or some sort of thing like this, or specifically Stormcast, you know, and you're wanting to use a black, this is like probably a good one to try. So I've already got this one ready. We're going to be doing it on this cloak here. So this has like about maybe 3 coats. If you're doing it over metallic, this has had about 3 coats of watered down black on it to get a nice even color there, as you can see. But if you weren't doing it over metallics like this has been done, you could probably just do it in 2 coats. But I add that extra one on just to make sure I've got that nice even color there, and you can see it's just ready to go. So I'll set the palette up now and we'll come back and get started. All right, so first up, we're going to be doing our base color. So that's going to be a dark gray. So you can either mix this or you can follow along with these army painter paints. And so we're just going to bring some of this across here, this dark one, which is the Necromancer Cloak. And we're going to add our water in. So 1 or 2 drops of water in with the dollop of paint, just to thin that down a little bit more. And so we've got a nice, just put that down there so you can see. There we go. Twirl off the brush, and that should be about right. We might mix a tiny bit of black in there just to darken it slightly, just so that we can really build this up. We're going for about 3 or 4 maybe layers, something like that. And we'll start with this and see how we go. So we'll just start usually with one edge and just test it out. So we'll come down across here, nice and thin, slow, even drag with the tip of your brush, not putting too much pressure. Because it's quite watery, the paint should just draw off the end and you'll end up with a nice, smooth line. And so we're just testing that out. So you can see now we're just getting a little bit of highlight going and it's nice and soft, and that's what we want. So we're just going to come around here with the brush and pick off all of these edges. Just nice, slow drags with the tip of your brush. You can build up and do like little hatch marks there to simulate a little bit of that, you know, the frayed edge of your cloak. Just very gently, just building that up, just getting a bit of light starting to occur, okay, on that model. We can come in a little bit maybe thicker across here, just to add a little bit more highlight. So we can see a little more of that. Yeah, and just build up maybe a little bit of hatching at the edge of it, just to sort of break up the line. And it will also dry darker, so you don't have to worry too much. So it'll come on a little bit lighter and then it'll dull down as it goes. And so we just bring down across over the top of this line. It's almost like painting Space Marine armor, I guess, but you're feathering out some of the edges to add that sort of soft transition. So you're going up a little bit on those edges there, just to create that darkness, that beginning that we're then going to highlight and build that color up, and just getting it looking nice. So that's what we're going for. We're just going to go across there and do that across all of these raised areas. So down these main big forms, okay, when you're coming across here, you're just going along that edge and just feathering it in, okay, and going around that. And we'll do that on this side as well. So on this side where you've got the bow there, this raised area, that's where you're going to bring it down. You probably use a slightly larger line for that. So you would maybe start off, I'll see if that's in focus there, and we just come down and we just begin by just dragging a line and building it out almost like a tall pyramid, like a little triangular shape. And you're just feathering your edge of your brush along that flat to create a kind of, you know, simulate that the way the light is hitting it. So you can see the way my lamp is hitting that. It's got this sort of bright there, and then it sort of fades into a duller light across that flat. That's the sort of thing you're simulating. So you're just feathering that color in and building up that tone, just like, you know, sort of simulating the way an airbrush might hit this surface. And that's the sort of thing you're going for. So we'll just get that all prepared, and then we'll move on to our first real color, which will be the Necromancer Cloak straight up. All right, so once we've established that base color down, you can see it's starting to give you some shape. It's very subtle, but that's what we want. It's a very soft gradation of color building up. So now we're going to move on to this Necromancer Cloak. This is going to be a very, very similar tone. A bit of water in. And this is just to reinforce the color slightly and give you a stronger finish. So we just run it with the tip of our brush coming down, leaving a little bit of that darker color so you get a sort of stepped style there. So you have a little bit of that other color coming through, lining across the edge, building to the edges, feathering in, as I said, leaving a little bit and building up that color. So we're starting to see some subtle change. Okay, and we're just going to go through now and just hit all these top areas with your brush, building in those lights, soft, very gentle across edges, adding a little bit of a line highlight to those edges, keeping it mostly black. And then just, allowing your instincts to show you the way. You don't need to do this exactly the way I'm doing it. You could put a little bit more light in there. You could put a little bit more dark. It's up to you, but you're trying not to make the whole thing gray, right? You're trying to keep that black. And because we've got this nice satin color, it's also reflecting a lot of light and adding a lot of shadows and a lot of interest. So, it's doing a lot of work for you as well, which is really nice. And depending on the surface, if you are doing a Stormcast here, then yeah, you're gonna get all these lovely folds and, interesting light shadows and so on. But if you're doing, let's say, trying this neutral black idea, let's say on a different surface, or maybe it's armor or something like that, then you get a different play of light and a different way that it's going to form. But where you're highlighting is going to be the same. You're going to edges. So if it was the armor, let's say, you'd be doing the up here on the edges, where the light is going to glint, just like on here, I've got the light silver on all those edges. That would be the gray if the armor was black. You can see on here, I've done it on this area. We've got some little lights. This has also had a contrast paint over the top of it. And we're just hitting up all those little edges if it's a hard surface like that, just to simulate the light hitting off it and that sort of thing. So it doesn't really matter. You could be doing this on any surface, but with cloth, we're looking for those smooth lines on the raised parts, the folds, on some of the edges, to get where the light would be hitting. And the beautiful thing about that low sheen as well is that it's also showing you where that needs to be, because the light that's coming down, your hobby light, is actually hitting all those areas for you and showing you that a roadmap of where you need, to be painting in the first place. So that's really cool. It makes this whole thing a lot easier. And if you haven't been aware of that while you're painting, like you've just been painting away and not even realizing that your light is like telling you what to do, next time you're sitting down, just take a look, take a moment to analyze what you're actually doing on the model, and see if the light that you're using can help inform that. And you might get one of those aha moments where you finally see, oh, that's where I need to be putting the light, or the dark, or whatever. Obviously it changes if you move the model around, but we're talking about sort of like from a direction, up from above kind of viewpoint. It should show you where the light should be, just like as if you did a zenithal highlight. So yeah, I'm going to go through and do that, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, next stage. So the highlight, we're going to use this mid-tone here, build it in. Now it's not going to be this straight mid-tone here. We're just going to add a little bit of that darker tone in, just to dull it slightly. We don't want it quite as bright as that. A little tiny bit of water, mix it up, and we're forming that gradient from dark to light. Toward the end of the brush, get your point. And then we're going to come in and just be nice and gentle and hit that edge just with the edge of your brush. Just giving you a nice little highlight there, as you can see. Okay, and now maybe just mix a little tiny bit more of that Necromancer Cloak in. Should be fine. Come across and go over it again, just on the very edge. Build in a bit of your feathering there, just because this area would probably get a little bit more light as it flicks up towards the sun. There we go. Just little tiny feathered lines, just building that light in, just on the edge. Not going too far in now, we're just hitting the very raised area. We're not going to build up the light too much past this. This is kind of like, about as bright as we're going to go, apart from like a few like subtle highlights. But this is effectively it. You're going to see just these couple of shades are already going to give you enough variety to where you could stop there. You know what I mean? If you liked that. Obviously, this is looking a little bit brighter on this light, but even in normal lighting conditions, this will look bright enough. You know, if we take a look at the one that I've done earlier, we see that the color doesn't go much past that. Do you see that? You know, you're not going up too much brighter. See, on those ends, I've got a bit more brightness there, but we don't need to go up very much more than this. So that's a really cool thing. So in the end, it's probably only about 3 layers that you need to do, but it's entirely personal preference. You can go a little lighter, a little darker. It really doesn't matter. It's all an aesthetic judgment call, right? So you're making those decisions for yourself. You're deciding how far up I want to go. You know, is this just a gaming army that I'm just trying to do a quick pass on to get something done, like a unit that, you know, maybe you've got to do another, I don't know, 20, 30 of these. Do you really want to spend that amount of time? Or do you want to just move on to the more, I guess, interesting models that you might have, or whatever it is? And that's the decision you make. But we're just putting these line highlights on, and we'll probably go one more highlight just on the ends to build it out, and we should be good. All right, I'll see you soon. All right, so as you can see, we're basically there. So you can see how fast and easy that was. Just super soft, little highlights, and you have the black done. And that's great for like your standard stuff, you know, your battle line troops and all that kind of thing. You know, you might go, if this was a character, you might go 2 or 3 shades lighter on the very edges to really make it pop out. But on your basic troops, this is like plenty. But just to push it a little further, we'll take some of this lighter gray here, put it next to the one we've got, allow that other color to mix into it so that we get a kind of off version of this color again. You'll notice in my tutorials I do that a lot because often the straight color isn't quite the right step. We're looking for something that's a bit more close to each one, especially when you're wanting nice soft transitions. If the steps are nice and close together, they'll blend easier and your eye will see them as like a nice gradient, soft gradient, rather than sort of, you know, very, very harsh, you know, stepping stones between each color. So we're looking pretty good, but we're just going to add a little tiny bit of this just on the ends and very sharp, fine highlights. So using the very tip of your brush, we're just going to run a little bit of brightness just very gently on some of these ends, just to show a little bit more life and light to these top areas here where the sun would probably hit, you know, from above. A little bit there, a little bit on there. But you can see I'm not going all the way down this time. I'm just hitting some ends just to get that very sharp pointed light. Now really, I mean, cloth probably wouldn't have that, but this is like a stylization of what we're trying to show. It's more just a satisfying feature. You'll see this a lot if you look at heavy metal painting and stuff like that. Often they'll have these little bright points of light on areas that probably wouldn't normally have it. You know, it's not quite realistic, but it helps your eye follow and gives you something interesting to look at when you're looking at these kind of what essentially is, I guess, quite a dull, you know, aspect. Like a dark black or neutral black isn't exactly like super exciting, but it just helps to bring it out and give you a little moment of interest there. And that's pretty much it. I won't even bother about doing too much down in here because there's a lot of shadow there. But you can see now we've got ourselves really fast, really easy, nice edge highlights on black that still read as black, that aren't, you know, it's not just all gray kind of thing. And you're done. And yeah, so this is like, you know, you could easily, as I said, put this out on you know, you could do this in batches so far. So we've used, you know, what's that? 1, 2, 3 basic layers and then a little fine highlight at the end, and that's it. And you're done. And this is going to help you a lot in building your dexterity, your skill at doing this type of like layered highlighting sort of stages. This could be used on any color. It could be used on the bone. You could be using it on flesh. You could be using it on all kinds of materials, you know, to get this type of thing. And it works really well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. At the end, there'll be a better photo, an overview, better photo, and the list of the paints that I've used. But otherwise, yeah, happy painting, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.